Hey friends, it's your teen and tween librarian Rebecca, and we're back for another episode of Bedtime Stories. I'm very excited because this is our 50th episode. Can you believe that? What? Yeah, if you have been reading with me this entire time since we began in late March, you will have read with me 12 and a half hours, about, give or take. 12 and a half hours. That's so much time, which reminds me to tell you, if you are following along with me, make sure to count these minutes for your summer reading program stats, because these totally count. Audiobooks aren't cheating. It's a good phrase to remember. But yay, 50 episodes. I'm pretty impressed with all of us for sticking with it. So that being said, without further ado, welcome to episode 50, otherwise known as chapter 26. Enjoy. Chapter 26, Alone. It must be admitted that so far things had gone fairly well, and I had little cause to complain. If our difficulties became no worse, there was no reason why we should not attain our object. And what glory would be ours then! I had quite seriously begun reasoning like the professor, possibly on account of the strange environment in which I found myself. For a few days, steeper slopes, some even alarmingly close to the perpendicular, took us deep into the inner mass. Some days we advanced between 4 and 5 miles nearer to the center. These were dangerous descents, in which Hans's skill and wonderful self-possession were invaluable to us. That calm Icelander helped us with almost incredible devotion and simplicity, and thanks to him we got out of a good many difficult situations which would have been too much for just the two of us. On the other hand, his silence became more profound with every day that passed, and I do believe that it even began infecting us. External objects have a decided effect on the brain. Anyone shut up between 4 walls ends up by losing the power to associate words and ideas. How many prisoners in solitary confinement have become dull-witted, if not actually insane, for want of exercise for their thinking faculties? During the fortnight following our last conversation, no incident worth recording took place. I can recall only one serious event which occurred about this time, but then I have good reason to remember it, and indeed could never forget even the smallest detail. By the 7th of August, our successive descents had brought us to a depth of 75 miles. In other words, we had 75 miles of rock, ocean, continents, and towns over our heads. We must then have been about 500 miles from Iceland. That day, the tunnel was going down a very gentle slope. I was walking in front. My uncle had one of the room corp lamps, and I had the other, which I was using to examine the beds of granite. Suddenly, turning around, I found that I was alone. Well, I thought, I've been walking too fast, or else Hans and my uncle have stopped somewhere. I must go back and join them. Luckily, it is in a steep slope. I turned back and walked for a quarter of an hour. I gazed around, but saw nobody. I called out, but got no reply. My voice was lost among the cavernous echoes. I began to feel uneasy, and a shiver ran down my spine. "Keep calm," I said aloud to myself. "I'm sure to find my companions again. There's only one path after all. Seeing that I was in front, I must go back." For a half an hour I climbed the slope. I listened to hear if anyone was calling me, for in that dense atmosphere a voice could carry a long way. But an extraordinary silence reigned in the long gallery. I stopped. I could not bring myself to believe that I was alone. I might have gone a little astray, but I could not be lost, and people who go astray always find their way again. "Come," I said to myself, "since there's only one path, and since they are following it, I'm bound to find them again. All I have to do is keep on climbing. Unless, of course, not seeing me and forgetting that I was in front, they have turned back too. But even then I shall catch up with them if I hurry. That's obvious. I repeated these last words like a man who's only half convinced. Besides, putting even these simple ideas together took me quite a long time. Then a doubt seized me. Had I really been in front of the others? Yes, that was certain. Hans had been following me ahead of my uncle. I could even remember him stopping for a little while to adjust the bundle on his shoulders. It must have been at that very moment that I had gone ahead. Besides, I thought, I have a guarantee against losing my way, an unbreakable thread to guide me through this labyrinth, and that is my faithful stream. I have only to follow its course backwards, and I'm sure to find my companions. This conclusion revived my spirits, and I decided to set off again without a moment's delay. I blessed my uncle's foresight in preventing Hans from stopping up the hole he had made in the granite wall. This beneficent spring, after having quenched our thirst on the way, was now going to be my guide through the winding galleries inside the earth's crust. Before continuing my climb, I thought a wash would do me good, and I bent down to plunge my head in the Hansbach. To my horror and amazement, I found that I was standing on rough, dry granite. The stream was no longer flowing at my feet. And that's the end of chapter 26. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bedtime Stories. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the library's YouTube channel. You can also find out what's happening at the library by visiting us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or you can always just go to the library's website. I hope to see you again for the next episode of Bedtime Stories, but until then, be well and sleep well.